Welcome to a new edition of Gerety Talks, the award that brings together some of the greatest creative leaders each year to look at work from a powerful perspective. This new series dedicated to indie agency founders is in partnership with Indie Agency News, who are building the global home for independent agencies. The mission, serve independent agencies and the brilliant people behind them. The goal, more visibility for indies, more choice for marketers. Today we welcome Yadira Harrison, co-founder at Verve, and Daniela Voita, CCO House of Rabbits. Welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Let us start with an introduction. Please tell us about your role and your agency. Yadira, would you like to start?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm co-founder of Verb. We are a brand experience agency, and really how we define that is everything that dares to go beyond traditional advertising. So what we always say is our magic secret sauce is like getting people, whether it's our audience or it's guests or it's attendees, to feel seen, valued, and connected and obsessed with the brands that we're working with. Some of the brands that we work with are Airbnb, Cook Unity, Eventbrite, the NBA, Nielsen. So it's been a wonderful 7 years, a little over 7 years run that we've had in this space, and it's been super fun. And I can't wait to continue to talk about it.
Um, yeah, hi everyone. I'm Daniela Voita. I'm the co-founder and chief creative officer of House of Rabbits. We are a brand new women minority-owned agency based in New York, but we have clients in the US and in Brazil, um, where I'm originally from. I'm actually, if you didn't know, I'm from Brazil. But people always ask us why rabbits, why you name your agency House of Rabbits. We love rabbits, but we are inspired by their ingenuity, their agility, their keen senses, and especially how rabbits are a symbol of prosperity. So I love the idea. You've been in the business for a while, but we're starting out, and yeah, all for prosperity and building brands and doing work that it's a full service agency, but we want to do things our own way, doing things in a different way to bring the rabbit magic.
And Daniela, you have it more recent in your mind, maybe. So let's start with you. What inspired you to start an independent advertising agency?
Yeah, what's interesting, I was thinking about, in the beginning, why I want to do this. Like, to be honest, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like, even in my early 20s, I decided I was going to start a beauty company with products and ingredients from the Amazon. I actually traveled to the Amazon. I did a lot of research. Um, I was so close to starting it, but then it was so daunting. Like back in the day, you didn't have the same access, the same way of communicating, and like, it's such a different landscape right now. And then 20 years later, I've been in this industry for a little while. I feel like this is what I love to do. This is what I'm good at. And this is what I should do. And it's also, like I said, it's a much easier time to start a business, but especially to start an indie agency, because the advertising landscape has changed so much. People are so much more open-minded to independence, and that's it. And then there was a moment, I think, when my partner and I've worked with Susan Young, who's a co-founder and co-chief creative officer for many years, and we were working on so many new businesses. Back we worked at BBDO, McCann, and even we were freelancing, and we were having a lot of success, right? And we were like, you know what, we could do this, ourselves. Why not? We feel like we cracked the code a little bit, so it just kind of made a lot of sense to start then.
I love that. I feel like that's the almost exact way that Shannon and I started our agency, because when you do find a lot of success, and I don't know if you found this, Daniela, but you also can start to get pigeonholed, and they want you to do the same thing again and again and again. And that's what was happening at our old agency, where we felt very much like pigeonholed by success, which is interesting. And we decided we wanted to do something that was different and approach brand experience and experiential in a very different way, in a way that was actually working for us. we kind of operated a little independently from the agency that what we were with. We built our own teams, we had our own P&Ls. Like it was just a little different. But for us, it was really about building what we wanted to see in the world. We realized we were doing that on a smaller scale. But it really was. We always call ourselves like a vibes first agency, where the vibe is just not about just a feeling, but it's also something that it's resonant. Like you can feel it from our people internally in our culture, and then how that kind of lives out in the world as we work with our clients. And so for us, it was about breaking the mold and thinking about how we wanted to truly innovate the space of brand experience, which we're still doing. You know, you can kind of get pigeonholed again by success that we've had with Verb, where it's like, well, seems like the route we should be going. But there was a North Star that we had when we really started this, when we talked about using all the tools in our toolbox that was making us successful, but then taking some of the things that were from our past lives or from things that we know really worked really well and how we wanted to build beyond that. So for us, it's kind of the same thing where you were having success someplace else and you're kind of like, I think I can either do this for myself or do it better, or have the freedom to say no or say yes to the things that you actually want to do in the world. So we have very similar stories, which I
Yeah,
love.
for sure.
And what about the fears and obstacles that you face when thinking about launching your own thing?
Oh boy. I think in the beginning for us, it really was about time and money. We gave ourselves 100 days. We pulled our savings. We kind of came together and said, how far can we go? How long can we go looking at the money that we had in our bank accounts? And really, we gave ourselves 100 days. And I always say, like, I don't know, I don't still know what we were going to do with those 100 days. I don't know. We already had the name. We already kind of pseudo had a deck. But what we realized is that we just want to give ourselves runway to like figure out what we're going to be. And, for us, it was, three clients within the first 3 days to a week where we were just off and running based off of, you send those goodbye notes to people like, hey, I'm moving on to something else. And people are like, where are you going? Where are you going? And so we had a reputation already. We were winning awards and doing really well. So people wanted to follow us and to bring us into the fold. And so for us, that was really the impetus of the beginning of like that time and money. And to Daniela's point earlier, back in the day, it used to feel really hard and really daunting. And now it's like there's, access at your fingertips that you're able to, kind of get started and move forward with people. And so we were able to take that 100 days and kind of shrink it down to like the first 3 to 7 days, which was really nice. But that was our biggest fear. Time and money would run out before we have to go back and do it for somebody else again.
That's great. 3 days. I love that. I love that. Now I think, my fear still is like just simple fear of failure, right? Like you put so much effort, you just effort and time and your, finances as well. But but I think what gives me comfort and gives me confidence is really the partners that I have. I think like I said, I worked with Susan Young for almost 20 years, I would say, and then reunited with Sarah Beaumont, who's our CEO. And then, together we feel like, we trust each other, we have each other's backs. It's like kind of like a safety net. And, I think I trust our combined talent, what we can do. Um, so I think, that's the way. Like I feel like the moment that we knew that we had each other, that we were going to do this together, it was much easier. And to be honest, I mean, we had been working even before we officially launched. We were already, kind of soft launching. We had a couple clients we were doing, but we wanted waiting for the big moment to announce, and that just felt right. But that was like, you know, it's it was definitely when it made it public, when we had, an article at Age, and and then it just everybody's like, send you wishes. You have like 300 comments and everybody's like rooting for you. You're like, okay, now there's a big responsibility. I can't fail. It's just not me. It's just like so many people with like, whether you're excited or you're unhappy with the industry, the way the industry is going, you want, the small independents to win. So there's a lot of like, weight in our shoulders to make this work, to, just kind of, help out, the overall, industry, and have another way to do things, to show that there is another way. So a lot of pressure.
That is real. We feel that
Yeah.
a lot, so we definitely understand that, and I know I do.
And you both had long careers in other agencies before launching your own agency. How do you think your previous roles prepared you for your role today? What did you learn throughout your career that prepared you to take this step?
Um, for me, it was funny because I think the I was always called when there was a really tough brief or a tough problem or tough client, something that like the bar was really high, like you had to have really good creative, like award-winning creative, but then there were 10 RTBs, there were like a lot of like, but you can't do this, you can't do that, and they will never buy this, or it's like round three and nobody has cracked. It's like kind of like the problem solver. That was what, you do that for 20 years, you're prepared for anything, and you can consistently put out, for the most part, good work. Obviously winning awards is really important in the business, right? Gives you the creds, but just having that superpower almost to be like, at that point you're like, okay, nothing scares me anymore. Um, you can kind of do anything, and also just being in the industry for that long, like you've been in crazy situations. It can be on a shoot and then the talent doesn't show up. We're like, or and you have to pivot everything. You have to rewrite a whole script, or I don't know, something happens 10 minutes before a huge presentation, or I don't know, like you get a new feedback last minute. Like it's crazy, and I don't know how. Like it feels like you're in an action movie where you need superpowers, and like I hope Marvel's watching this because we can write Marvel a movie about advertising and rabbits. Action movie. But it's just being in those situations, and nothing phases you. Like nothing, like it's almost like autopilot, but you always want to do good work. But you just know how to compartmentalize things and just kind of have that go mode and do it. That, I think gives us the confidence that we can, we're invincible, like, but we can just do it. We can crack it. So I think that's prepared us really well for this next challenge. Or about
I
you?
think Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of, it's interesting. I was on the brand side for about 10 years before I went to agency side. And on the brand side, especially because I worked on, I used to work on like Macy's Parade and entertainment stuff. And so that stuff had been around for years and years and years. So it kind of had its own routine. But what I noticed from the minute I started as a coordinator and then grew into a director. I kind of had always had like my own little world, like my own little department that I continue to build and build and build. And so even though it was more on the traditional side where, it kind of had a set year, I was building kind of this muscle of how to build a department, how to build a team, how to do things on my own resources. Then I switched and went to the agency side. And to Danielle's point, I was just like, wait, what do you mean? Like we had an operations team and a this team and a this team who handled all of this stuff that now all of a sudden was like, and then you need to go find creative producers and you need to go find producers and do all the things and build the team again. And so I had that skill set coming from Macy's of building a team and understanding, how to do that I needed to do that now on the agency level with all of this coming at me, where I was just like, it was so siloed before, where it was like all of this is coming together. So I always talk about, like, I think what prepared me the most for starting Verb was like being able to build and run a business within a business, which is like the best thing you can do. And I always tell that to like folks who want to be agencies of start their own agency, of like, think about how especially if you're someone who has an account, or you have something of that, you have an account, or you have a particular project, how can you run this as your business? Thinking about that of building your own budgets, your own teams, your own P&Ls, your own resources, your own also ways of working. Shannon and I worked together for I think it was like 4 years, specifically on Airbnb at the time. And we had our own ways of working. We had our own kind of rules within the team, the ways that we wanted to see things happening. So that's really where I honed my leadership style also, of like, and thinking about like the types of projects and the types of clients that we wanted to have, and what are the different things for like from the measurements and the KPIs and all the stuff that our clients were getting, judged on, and we were also getting judged on. So it just really helped us to like build, but also like build that muscle of I'd never seen that many pivots until I got to the agency side of just like, what do you like? We made that decision yesterday. What do you mean like
Yes.
this is happening now? And that for the first year, that really played heavily on me and weighed heavily on me because I was just like, I'm just not used to that much change. And so I had to figure out like what was my style of way of working with that. And so now with Verb, it's like, I don't know if you get this, Daniela, people ask us like, how fast can you get something done? And it's like,
Mhm.
that's not a fair question because it's like we've gotten up to a mountaintop in literally a
Yeah.
mountaintop, like big sky in 2 weeks of like figured out how to like get something done up there. But it's like if you would give me like a year and a half, I would really appreciate that. So learned and honed a lot of those skills of building teams and also like understanding the world of like pivots and change and the ever-changing nature of the business.
Yeah. It's funny because when we were naming our agency House of Rabbits, we're like, yes, that's going to be the first thing people are going to think about. You can do things like, fast like rabbits. I mean, we are fast, but we did not put we didn't promise that in our website. We don't say that very carefully because we don't want to promise
Yeah.
rabbit
It's a
speed.
loaded question. It's a loaded
Yeah.
question of how
Yeah.
fast you go. It's like, I would rather the time, which nobody has anymore, but we're all moving at the speed of light or fast as rabbits.
Yeah, I guess time and change are some of the things that, but at least I heard that mentioned in many of the talks and interviews that I do. And you both mentioned about everything changing in the advertising scene and with the independent agencies. What do you think today are the biggest challenges that independent agencies face, and more globally, the advertising industry in general faces?
Um, I would say from like I don't know if this is across the board, but I can tell you from a brand experiential side. I always talk about this notion of a lot of brands really, they're signing people up and they're signing agencies up for like this kind of one-on-one project work, but there still is this expectation of like a AOR treatment, of you're going to be so deep in their business or you're kind of dedicated. And it's just like that we're off kilter. And I think that that's what we're seeing right now in the agency landscape of where people are really starting to have that conversation or starting to feel the effects of that because when there was AOR dollars against it, yeah, it was easy to have a dedicated team and to do all the things and to make sure that all of those folks that are dedicated to your business are with you the whole time. But as everyone's budgets are getting smaller, and again, time is creeping up. There is still this like want and need that it's moving to this kind of project basis, but you still kind of want that dedicated team and then they're deep dive with you. And it's just like that. We're just off kilter about that. And so it's something I continue to speak about and continue to talk about and have to talk to clients about, especially as you're navigating that road of what does that look like. And that's sometimes a hard conversation to have, but it's a conversation that we as a industry do need to have. It's a reality that you can't get the same thing that you used to have. If you're not spending $50 million anymore with an agency, then I don't know why you expect $50 million worth of people or resources or bandwidth to believe me, I think all parties would like that. And I think that it's just instead of kind of breaking it up, which is what people are doing, they're taking their 50 million and spending a million with you and 10 million with you and 3 million with you when there used to be agencies that would, take the whole thing. And I think that is also the beauty of indies because we're kind of chipping away at that. But by chipping away at that, this doesn't feel like brands are coming with that same 50 million or even breaking it up to like 10, 10, and 10. They're kind of saying to the indies like, hey, you get 1 to 2 mil, and it's off kilter. Globally, I think just economics. I think uncertainty, a lot of consolidation. I think just thinking about like what's happening right now, and especially for indies who are still 100% founder funded. Like I know there was some chitter chatter last week about indies if they're private have private equity or they have investor money and things of that sort. I have my own opinion about that, but I do think that economics. I mean, we can't. We've had, I don't know, Daniela, you've had that, but in conversations that we've had, they've halted like 30 to 60 days out. They just started halting because people are thinking about the economy, they're thinking about their products, their
Yeah.
services, who's getting laid off, like all of this stuff that is really there's nothing you can do about that. There's only so much pitching you can do when the whole world is kind of clamming up with their dollars, and that just makes it harder to predict and to forecast.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on. I think um, for us right now, the biggest challenge is basically what you said your challenges, but slightly different because I think because we are starting out, like you're leaving a decision tree almost because every decision you make is going to have a repercussion. And then it's just kind of like having that North Star and figuring out this is where we want to get, how we're going to get there, but knowing that you can take some derails along the way. Are they good or they're not? So it's just kind of like really finding, really having like a soul searching conversation, but as a, with your partners, right, is really important. And I think to us, that's like every day, we have that conversation, right? We make time for us to talk and make sure every decision we make, every project we decide to take or not decide to take is going to help our mission. So that's been a challenge, but that's been a good challenge. And then I think you're right, like the advertising world, like it feels like it's changing so fast with technology, with obviously with AI, with the whole, holding companies merging and then any companies, coming up. There's like so much going on, but and we are, yeah, I believe, we're in the brink of recession. Like it,
Mhm.
it it's probably it's gonna happen. Like, I want to be positive, but I think it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And we are having these conversations, but I think it could be an opportunity for indies because like if I'm a client, like yes, I'm gonna have to cut my fees, but I'm not gonna disappear into oblivion, right? I still need to be saying things. So
Mhm.
I would go to an indie because you have the talent, you have the brains. Like if you're because we're so new, like if you're working with House of Rabbits, you're gonna work with me, you're gonna work with Susan, you're gonna work with Sarah. Like, and
Mhm.
we were like top, creatives, and Sarah was CEO at Woven, like the top, you know, creatives and account service that you could have in a big agency. We're getting that much more economically and maybe more agile because we're rabbits. Uh, in a small agency. So I think I'm hoping, right? Of course, I want the best for the country. I don't want people to lose jobs or anything. I think it's terrible. But I think I'm hoping that it just, you know, furthers the mission of indies, of independence to, to offer this alternative, right? That is probably better for clients and for brands.
Mhm. I agree with that.
And Yadira, I read on a post on your LinkedIn about what happened to you once in a panel. You said a few years ago, I sat in a room full of small indie and emerging agencies listening to a panel of agency consultants and matchmakers. Someone asked a simple, honest question: how do we get on your radar for bigger pitches? The response: smack smiles and dismissive. Send us your capes and keep reaching out. It didn't just feel out of touch; it felt lazy, and it ignored where the industry was clearly headed. Can you tell us more about this direction and some of the other things and thoughts you explained in the post? It was quite long. I'm not going to read it all.
Yeah, no. I want to say it was like maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I just remember turning to Shannon, my co-founder, and just saying, like, this is like so out of touch. Like they're gonna like I don't understand what's happening here, especially in the room that we were in. And it's something that just kind of stuck with me for a while. But then I started seeing this trend over the last couple of, it feels like weeks, but probably months, where brands, especially like brand visionaries, the folks who are at their jobs, who are looking for something different, they are out here seeking new agency partners. They're on the LinkedIn's, they're doing these cattle calls, whether I like them or not. They're on the group chats, they're in people's DMs asking for new agencies, whoever, especially, and I've noticed this with like bigger companies where they're most likely to either have consultants or have procurement teams that don't really know what's going on. And the only reason why I'm even paying attention to it is because we're getting tapped and tagged in so much of this stuff. And for me, what I'm noticing is that, with these brands hiring the consultants, it's frustrating because, I've talked to some of these consultants. One, they don't have a lot of underrepresented companies and agencies that they represent. or and don't even have us on their radar, or two, they don't think about outside of like traditional full service. They're not thinking about brand experience or content or social influencer. And as we know, the world, as I just talked about, is changing where people are taking their 50 million and going one place. They're going to spend 5 million on content and find an agency partner there. And they want to take their 10 million and go do this part here. But if you don't have those folks in your back pocket, then what are you bringing to the table? Then you're kind of always bringing the same people, same agencies to the table. And so I just wanted to talk about that because, I remember turning to Shannon and saying, they just need to be thinking about this as if they were sports recruiters. Like, I'm a big F1 fan. I'm like, there's like F3, F2, F1, you know what I mean? And so it's like, how do you sit in a room full of emerging agencies? And so many of those agencies, it's interesting when I look back now, are at the top of their game right now. But I know for a fact a lot of those consultants do not have that relationship. I think about ourselves, like we've had a lot of momentum and success over the last 2 years. Never heard from another consultant, ones I've talked to or not, again, about being in the room with those partners and those bigger dollars and things of that sort. And so I think that there's something that's broken. And I think that they're kind of writing themselves out of the landscape because now you have these brand visionaries who are just kind of saying like, hey, LinkedIn, who knows hot agencies? Hey, XYZ group chat of all these CMOs that we know, who knows XYZ agency? And I just think that there's a major disconnect, but it's something that we're seeing. So I just wanted to write about it, and it got a lot of traction, and a lot of people were like, "Thank you so much," especially a lot of indie and emerging agencies, because you have folks like yourself, you have folks like Indie Agency News, you have folks like Lindsay Slate. They're out there, they're doing the consulting work from a perspective of recruiting. They say, "Who are the next agencies coming up?" But all of the traditional consultants and procurements, they're not procurement teams. They're not necessarily doing that. They're just kind of going with tried and true or who they know. And part of that is time. But I do think there needs to be a revamping of that system if they really want to continue to stay around. So I think that, technology is key. We can start to just kind of go around each other.
Hmm. And talking about leadership, how do you encourage the people that work with you to give out the creative best?
For me, I don't think it's changed since, from always. Like I think it's giving people like listening to people, give them the support if they need, but giving them independence and ownership. Um, I think that hasn't changed. I think that was always like we work in a people's industry, right? You have to treat people like you want to be treated, no matter what level, they are. Um, but what I love about having any agency is that it just seems that people are happier. Like people are more excited, you know, to work for an indie. When you're working for a holding company, it just feels so like abstract, like who you're working for. There's like the machine, like who's and it's incredible. Like I said before, the support that you get, from, whether it's from people working with you or even other indies, like there's a camaraderie, like that people come to us, they've offered like so much help, like, making phone calls, like even like finances or whatever it is. Like people are just so willing. Any question you have, you can ask anybody, and they're so quick to just offer a hand. And even people working for big agencies too, they've helped us. Like, can't name names, but but I feel like we've had some, fairy godmothers, godfathers in this industry, because I think there's like a overall, like, I think people want the industry to succeed, and people are looking for that change, like I said before. So it's been great.
I totally agree with that. There is a camaraderie of all the indies coming together, and we too have had some, and still have some fairy godmothers and godfathers who help us and just help us to think about the business differently or how we approach things differently. I think for myself, of just thinking about leadership, and we always talk about this, most people talk about like attention to detail, and that's what we used to describe all the time. But we started to realize that our team, they felt this like weird sense of like having to be perfect with the attention to detail. Because attention to detail, the minute that you say that is like, then you forget like you spell something wrong. Right? It's like the minute that you say like we have attention to detail, and it just was kind of setting this like unrealistic expectation of how they should show up, what they should show up, and it started to kind of build this like this weird tension in our culture. And then we switched that one day. One of our team members started talking about the intention to detail, and that's really more of what we are about, of like that time, the care, the effort of building. Um, Success. What does that look like for our clients? What does that look like for, the audience who's on the other end of our experience? That seen, value, connected, obsessed that I talked about. And for us, that's really been the major push of our leadership style and how we kind of drive creative on our end, of just like be intentional about your work, be intentional about your operations, be intentional about the logistics, be intentional about, the guest experience, all of the things that we are doing and building and how we're all coming together, and be intentional with one another. And I think that's what really kind of sets our creative apart. 'Cause I think everybody knows that we're all coming to win and do something together and do something bold and different, but it's starting from that place as opposed from a place of perfectionism. So I think for us, that's the biggest driver, is that people know that they can take a swing, and if you miss, you miss, and we miss together. And that's, I think, the biggest driver of our creative.
One of our ambassadors once said in an interview something that I liked very much. One of the things I have learned is that each one of us has an idea of what success means that we need to reformulate from time to time. What does success mean to you today?
Oh boy. Um,
I
100
love
million.
this question.
Yeah. It's like, I was like, a funny thing would be like $100 million and close business. That's really, but I don't know if that is what truly defines our success anymore. I think for us, we've been fortunate. We've had a lot of success and a lot of recognition now. I think we used to be fly really under the radar, very, if you know before, and we've really kind of opened that up and been out there. Um, but I think for us, it's really more so about, building what we want to see in the world and what's next. And uh, what success looks like for us is like working with visionaries. We talk about this. We're no longer we're built by referral, essentially. I think, most people know that we used to have a referral only model, and I'm not gonna say we don't do that anymore. It's still very heavily referral. But one thing that will never change is that we're for visionaries only. And I think for us, we want to work with folks who have the same values, who want to do the same work, who want to really kind of go there and move into different territories and areas in the creative atmosphere where maybe they don't necessarily feel comfortable, or they're not really sure, and working with us to help guide them and lead them into that work. We get a lot of folks who talk about like Brian Chesky a lot, and they really they think about like big vision and, all those things. And we always say like, but do you have Brian guts? I've worked with Airbnb for so long, and I've had the pleasure of, a couple of times of like working with him, being in the room with him. There's guts there. There's something to doing that. And I think that's what drives us. And for us, that's what success looks like. We want to work with more of those folks in the room. We want to do a lot of that, that work that's like the never been done before. And sometimes that comes with $100 million, and sometimes that doesn't. But that's the kind of work that we want to do. And that's what I think for us success means.
That's great. I love that. Um, I think it's interesting because success to me hasn't changed. I think I still want to work with brands, build brands. They're successful, that hopefully makes a difference in the world, that makes the world better. Um, I think what's changed when you have your own agency is that you're able to do that on your own terms, right? And that's really important because then you can create your systems, your processes, just to fulfill what you believe, the way you want to work. And that becomes a better way to work, right? Because I think when you're honest with your clients, when you're honest with your teams, I truly believe you're going to lead to fewer rounds of work. You're going to lead to a more efficient process. You're going to lead to more success. And then in turn, hopefully, to me, I think the work-life balance is important. So I think ultimately, maybe it's a dream, but I think if we get to the point where you're working with transparency and honesty, and you truly understand your client's needs and you have a good relationship. Because I think by having a small agency, you're much closer to your clients, right? I can go pick up my phone and text my clients and ask them a direct question, right? Like, and it's been great. And I also think the clients more open to indies, they're looking for that. I think that's also what they want. I don't think clients want to have like 10 rounds of revisions on a project, right? Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be, on a weekend having to talk to the agency, right? It's like, so I think ultimately it is really an ambition, desire to make the way of working better, more efficient, and leading to a better result, which hasn't changed, but I think now I think I feel more empowered to really bring that, to life.
You
Yeah,
control your destiny, right? You
yeah,
can,
for
that's
sure.
that's the freedom that we all jumped in.
Freedom. Yeah, I think freedom is
Of
a good.
yeah, you want to do it your way because we've all been places where it's like, I don't know if I would do it that way. And now we have the choice to say, I'm
Yeah.
going to do it
And
this way. If I don't like it, I can change it tomorrow. You don't want to, but you can if you want to.
and then it's funny because we are always questioning that. You're like, okay, should we do it this way just because that's the way we've done before, or is the best way? And then sometimes we find a much better way.
Yeah.
And that goes to every part of what you do, every part of the process, right? You can reinvent it, and that's great.
I
Um,
always tell it to the team, I'm like, it's going to be messier here because we're not building what everybody else is building. We want to
mhm,
take the good, we want to understand the bad, but it might take us a little longer. It might take us because we're collaborating as opposed to just being directed to say this is what it's done or this is what's always been done. And that's messy. And that's hard for people who've especially been in the agency business for a long time where it's like, I know the shortcut, but it's like there's a reason why that doesn't work on some level. And we're
yeah.
trying to unlock those things so we can do it differently here. So I totally hear you and respect that, and I'm definitely on the same page.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your thoughts with us, and all the best for the projects to come. I hope you do great things.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.